Nobody believed the 79-year-old woman in room 118 when she said someone special visited her every Saturday. Her own children thought she was making it up. But what happened that morning in the Willow Creek nursing home would reveal a secret that had been buried for over 50 years and change everything a mother thought she knew about loss, love, and the child she never got to raise. Margaret Henderson sat in her usual spot by the window, her arthritis-gnarled fingers wrapped around a cup of lukewarm tea. The morning sun cast long shadows across the faded floral wallpaper of her room. She wasn't looking at the shadows, though. Her eyes were fixed on the parking lot entrance, waiting, always waiting. Every Saturday, for the past 3 months, at exactly 10 a.m., she would arrive. The mysterious woman who called herself Sarah. Before we continue this incredible story of a mother's hidden heartbreak and an unexpected reunion, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We share powerful, emotional stories from nursing homes across America every week, stories that deserve to be heard. The first time Sarah walked into her room, Margaret's heart had done something it hadn't done in years. It had recognized something her mind couldn't quite place. The woman was elegantly dressed, probably in her early 50s, with the kind of confidence that came from success. She'd introduced herself as a volunteer, someone who visited lonely residents. But there was something in her eyes, something in the way she tilted her head when she smiled, that made Margaret's chest tighten with a familiar ache. Margaret had 3 children, at least. That's what everyone believed. Robert, the eldest, now 58, was a successful accountant who visited once a month, always checking his watch. Linda, 56, was a real estate agent who came twice a year, usually around holidays, always with an excuse to leave early. And Michael, the youngest at 54, hadn't visited in 6 months. Not since the argument about selling Margaret's house to pay for the nursing home. But there was a fourth child, a baby girl born on February 14th, 1969, in a small hospital outside of Minneapolis. A child no one knew about, a secret Margaret had carried for 54 years, buried so deep that sometimes even she wondered if it had been real. Every February 14th, while the world celebrated Valentine's Day, Margaret mourned in silence. What she discovered next would shake her entire world. The baby's father had been James Turner, a young teacher who'd just been assigned to the local elementary school. Margaret was only 23, a widow with 3 young children. Her husband had died in Vietnam 2 years earlier, leaving her with a small pension and a broken heart. James was kind, handsome, and paid attention to her in a way no one had since her husband's death. For 3 months, they met in secret. He brought her flowers, took her dancing in towns where no one knew them, made her feel alive again. Then she found out she was pregnant. The same week, she discovered James was married. His wife was back in Chicago, finishing her own degree. He'd planned to bring her to Minnesota once he was settled. Margaret never confronted him. She simply stopped answering his calls, quit her job at the school cafeteria, and moved to her sister's house 2 towns over. When the baby was born, she held her for exactly 3 days. 3 days of memorizing every tiny feature, every little sound, the weight of her in her arms. Then the adoption agency came. The nurse who took the baby had promised she would go to a good family. A doctor and his wife, she'd said. They've been trying for years. They'll give her everything. Margaret had nodded, unable to speak through her tears. She'd returned home, told everyone she'd been helping her sick sister, and never spoke of it again. Not to her second husband, Harold, whom she married 5 years later, not to her children, not to anyone. But secrets have a way of surfacing, especially in places like nursing homes, where time moves differently, and the past feels closer than the present. Sarah's visits had started innocently enough. She would bring flowers, always daisies, which happened to be Margaret's favorites, though she'd never mentioned it. They would talk about small things, The weather, the food at the nursing home, books Sarah was reading. But Margaret noticed things. The way Sarah unconsciously rubbed her right ear when she was thinking, exactly like Margaret did. The small birthmark behind her left ear, identical to Margaret's own. The way she laughed, throwing her head back slightly, just like Margaret's own mother used to. During their fifth visit, Sarah had mentioned she was adopted. "I've always known," she said casually, stirring sugar into her coffee. "My parents were wonderful. Dad was a cardiologist. Mom was a teacher. They told me when I was 7 that I was chosen. Special." She'd smiled, but Margaret had seen something else in her eyes. A question, a searching. That's when Margaret began to wonder. But she was afraid to hope, afraid to even think it might be possible. The adoption had been closed, sealed. There was no way Sarah could know, was there? The real shock came 3 weeks ago. Sarah had been talking about her work. She was a CEO of a medical technology company, something that would have made any mother proud. When she mentioned her birthday, February 14th, she'd said, "Valentine's baby, my mom always called me." Margaret's teacup had slipped from her hand, shattering on the linoleum floor. Sarah had rushed to help clean up, and in that moment, kneeling together on the floor, picking up broken pieces, their eyes had met, really met, and Margaret saw recognition there. Not full understanding, but something. Here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Sarah had hired a private investigator 6 months ago. After her adoptive parents died within a year of each other, she'd finally decided to search for her birth mother. The records were sealed, but the investigator was good. He'd traced birth certificates, hospital records, adoption agency files that had been digitized and inadvertently made searchable. He'd narrowed it down to 3 possible women, all of whom had given up baby girls in Minnesota in February 1969. Margaret Henderson was the second one. Sarah had found the first woman had passed away 10 years earlier. When Sarah found Margaret at Willow Creek, she hadn't been sure. The investigator had warned her that Margaret had never told anyone about the adoption, that approaching her directly might cause distress or denial. So Sarah had decided to volunteer at the nursing home, to get to know Margaret slowly, to be certain before revealing anything. But something happened that changed everything. Sarah had done a DNA test through one of those ancestry websites, just to have more information. 2 weeks ago, she'd gotten a match, a half-sibling match. Michael Henderson, Margaret's youngest, acknowledged son, had done the same test a year earlier, looking into the family genealogy. The science didn't lie. Sarah was definitely Margaret's daughter. Now, sitting in Margaret's room that Saturday morning, Sarah held an envelope in her hand. Inside were the DNA results. Her original birth certificate, with Margaret's name finally uncovered, and a letter she'd written and rewritten a dozen times. She was terrified. What if Margaret denied it? What if she was angry? What if she wanted Sarah to leave and never come back? Margaret, meanwhile, was fighting her own battle. The message Sarah had sent, "We need to talk about something important," had kept her awake all night. She knew, somehow, she knew what was coming. The truth she'd buried for 54 years was about to surface, and she didn't know if she was ready. What would her other children think? They'd be furious that she'd kept such a secret. They might think it meant she'd love them less. Robert, especially, with his rigid sense of right and wrong, would be devastated. Nancy, the morning nurse, noticed Margaret's agitation. "Are you all right, Mrs. Henderson? You seem nervous today." "I'm fine, dear," Margaret lied, her voice shaking slightly. "Just waiting for my visitor." Nancy patted her shoulder. "That Sarah is such a lovely woman. You're lucky to have such a devoted volunteer. I wish all our residents had someone who visited so regularly." If only she knew, Margaret thought. If only anyone knew the truth about those visits. The shocking revelation was about to unfold At exactly 10 a.m., Sarah appeared in the doorway. She looked different today, more formal, more nervous. She was wearing a navy blue suit, the kind she probably wore to important business meetings. In her hand was a manila envelope that she clutched like a lifeline. "Good morning, Margaret," she said, her voice softer than usual. "Good morning, dear," Margaret replied, her heart pounding so hard she was sure Sarah could hear it. Sarah closed the door behind her, something she'd never done before. She pulled the visitor's chair closer to Margaret's, sat down, and for a long moment they just looked at each other. The silence stretched between them, filled with 54 years of separation, longing, and unspoken truths. "I know who you are," Sarah finally whispered. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Do you? You're my mother, my birth mother." The words hung in the air, like a prayer. Finally answered, Margaret reached out with trembling hands, and Sarah took them. They were both crying now, quietly. The kind of tears that come from a place too deep for sound. "I'm sorry," Margaret sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I was young and scared and alone, and I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought you'd have a better life." "I did have a good life," Sarah said, squeezing her hands. "My parents were wonderful. But there was always something missing, a piece of me that felt incomplete. I needed to find you, not because I was angry or hurt, but because I needed to know where I came from. I needed to know you." Margaret pulled her close then, holding her daughter for the first time in 54 years. Sarah smelled expensive, like perfume Margaret could never afford. But underneath that, there was something familiar, something that took Margaret back to those 3 precious days in 1969, when she'd held a tiny baby who smelled like hope and heartbreak combined. But the moment of reunion was interrupted by a sharp knock on the door. Before either woman could respond, it opened. Robert stood there, Margaret's eldest son, holding a bouquet of flowers, unusual for him, as he typically came empty-handed. "Mother, I—" He stopped mid-sentence, taking in the scene. Two women embracing, both with tear-streaked faces. His expression shifted from surprise to confusion to something harder. "What's going on here?" Sarah pulled back, but kept hold of Margaret's hand. Margaret's mind raced. This wasn't how she wanted him to find out. This wasn't how any of this was supposed to happen. "Robert," she began, but her voice cracked. "Who is this woman, and why is she upsetting you?" Robert's tone had turned protective, almost aggressive. He moved further into the room, setting the flowers on the dresser with more force than necessary. Sarah stood, extending her hand. "I'm Sarah. I've been visiting your mother as a—" "I know who you claim to be," Robert interrupted. "The volunteer. But volunteers don't make residents cry." "Mother, has this woman been bothering you, taking advantage of you? I've heard about people who prey on elderly residents, trying to get written into wills." "Robert," Margaret's voice came out stronger than it had in years. "Stop it right now. You don't understand. What happened next would destroy a family's carefully constructed history." "Then help me understand," Robert said, crossing his arms. "Because from where I'm standing, this looks suspicious. A wealthy-looking woman, showing up every week, private visits, and now tears. Mother, you need to be careful. You're vulnerable here." Margaret felt anger rise in her chest. Vulnerable. She'd survived the death of her first husband, raised 3 children alone, kept a secret that had nearly destroyed her, and built a new life with Harold. She'd buried Harold too, sold their house to afford this nursing home, when her children couldn't or wouldn't help enough. And now Robert wanted to paint her as some helpless victim. "Sarah is your sister," Margaret said flatly. The words dropped like a bomb. Robert's face went white, then red. "What are you talking about?" I don't have another sister. It's just me, Linda, and Michael. You have another sister, an older sister, born in 1969. Before I met your stepfather, I gave her up for adoption. Robert sank into the empty chair near the door, his legs seeming to give out. That's not possible. You would have told us. Dad would have told us. Harold never knew, Margaret admitted. No one knew. It was my secret, my burden to carry. Your burden? Robert's voice rose. What about us? What about the truth? My God, Mother, we had a sister out there all these years, and you never said anything. How could you? Sarah stepped forward. Please, don't blame her. She did what she thought was best at the time. The world was different in 1969. An unwed mother with 3 children. She didn't have choices like women do today. Robert turned on her. And you? What do you want? Money? A piece of the inheritance? There's nothing left, you know. This place takes everything. Robert. Margaret was truly angry now. How dare you? Sarah is a successful businesswoman. She doesn't need our money, what little there is. She came looking for me because she wanted to know her family, her real family. We're not her real family, Robert said coldly. Her real family is whoever raised her. This is just biology. The cruelest words were yet to come. Sarah's face had gone pale, but she maintained her composure. You're right, she said quietly. My real family were the people who raised me, but Margaret is also my family. My birth mother, and yes, biology matters. It's why I have her eyes, her mannerisms, why I'm allergic to strawberries, just like she is, something I didn't know until I found her. You've been studying her, Robert accused. Learning about her to what? Manipulate your way into our family. Our family? Margaret laughed bitterly. What family, Robert? You visit once a month for 15 minutes. Linda comes twice a year. Michael hasn't been here in 6 months. Sarah has spent more time with me in the last 3 months than the 3 of you combined in the past year. Robert flinched. We have lives, Mother, responsibilities. And Sarah doesn't. She runs a company with 500 employees, and she still makes time every single Saturday because she wanted something from you. Yes, Sarah said firmly. I wanted to know my mother. I wanted to understand where I came from. I wanted to fill a hole that's been in my heart my entire life. Is that so wrong? The door opened again. This time it was Linda, holding a small gift bag. Robert, what are you doing here? And why is everyone? She trailed off, sensing the tension in the room. Perfect timing, Robert said sarcastically. Mother has an announcement. Apparently, we have an older sister she forgot to mention for the last 54 years. Linda's gift bag hit the floor. The family secret was now spiraling out of control. The next hour was chaos. Linda cried, blubbered, paced, and ranted. Sarah tried to explain, showing them the DNA results, the birth certificate, the private investigator's report. Margaret sat in her chair, looking older and more fragile than ever, but her jaw was set with determination. I don't believe this, Linda kept saying. Mom, how could you keep this from us? From Dad? Your father wasn't my first husband, Margaret reminded her. You knew that. You knew I was widowed when he married me. But a baby? A whole person? Our sister? Linda's voice was high, hysterical. Did you ever think about her? Did you ever want to find her? Every single day, Margaret said quietly. Every birthday, every Christmas, every time I saw a woman who might be the right age, I wondered if she was happy, if she was healthy, if she hated me for giving her away. I never hated you, Sarah said. My parents told me from the beginning that my birth mother loved me so much. She gave me a better life than she could provide. They made sure I knew it was an act of love. not abandonment. How convenient, Robert muttered. A fairy tale narrative. Sarah's composure finally cracked. You know what? You're right. It was a fairy tale. Because my adoptive parents loved me unconditionally. They supported me, believed in me, showed up for every school play and graduation and birthday. They were there, which is more than I can say for you with your own mother. You don't know anything about our relationship with our mother, Robert shot back. I know she sits here every day, alone. I know she lights up when she talks about you, even though you barely visit. I know she keeps pictures of all of you by her bed and tells me stories about when you were young. I know she loves you despite your neglect. The truth was hitting harder than anyone expected. Neglect? Linda was incredulous. We're not neglectful. We pay for her to be here. Actually, Margaret said quietly, Medicare and my savings pay for me to be here. You all contribute a total of $300 a month. Between the three of you. Silence fell. Sarah looked shocked.
They don't.
Margaret, are you struggling financially? Margaret waved her hand. I manage. I've always managed. No, Sarah said firmly. This isn't managing. This is surviving. She looked around the small room with its faded wallpaper, the ancient television, the narrow bed with thin blankets. This isn't right. Don't you dare, Robert started, but Sarah cut him off. I'm not criticizing. I'm stating facts. I've been in other rooms here. Volunteering. The private pay residents have larger rooms, better amenities, more care. Margaret deserves better. And I suppose you're going to sweep in and save the day? Linda asked bitterly. The long-lost daughter returns to show us all up? I want to help my mother, Sarah said simply. Our mother. The door opened a third time. Michael stood there, looking confused. What's going on? I saw Robert and Linda's cars and, who are you? Your sister, Robert said flatly. Surprise. Mom had another kid she never told us about. Michael's reaction was different from his siblings. He walked slowly into the room, studied Sarah's face, then turned to Margaret. Is it true? Margaret nodded, unable to speak. Michael was quiet for a long moment. Then, do you have any idea what this means? What this does to us? But his next words weren't what anyone expected. This is actually amazing, Michael said, a strange smile spreading across his face. This is perfect. Everyone stared at him. What? Linda asked. Don't you see? We have another sibling, another person to share the burden. 4 ways instead of 3. He turned to Sarah. You'll contribute to her care, right? Take some shifts visiting? Maybe help with the holidays? Sarah looked disgusted. That's your first thought. How to reduce your own responsibility. It's practical, Michael shrugged. Look, no offense, but you're a stranger. You can't just waltz in here and expect what? A happy family reunion? We don't even know you. You don't know me because Margaret protected you from knowing, Sarah said. She kept this secret to avoid exactly this judgment, anger, rejection. And look how you're proving her right. We have a right to be angry, Robert insisted. We were lied to our entire lives. I never lied, Margaret said weakly. I just didn't tell. A lie of omission is still a lie, Mother. Margaret started to cry again, real, deep sobs that shook her whole body. I was 23 years old. I had 3 babies already, and no husband. I was working 2 jobs just to feed you. When I got pregnant again, I knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't give another child the life they deserved. So yes, I made a choice. I gave her to people who could love her and provide for her. And then I buried that pain so deep, I thought I'd die from it. But I survived. For you, all of you. You survived for us? Linda laughed bitterly. Or you survived in spite of what you did. The devastating accusation hung in the air. Sarah stood up. I think I should go. This was a mistake. I shouldn't have come here. Shouldn't have disrupted your lives. No, Margaret reached for her. Please don't go. Not again. I can't lose you again. You never had her to lose, Robert said cruelly. She's not your daughter. She's someone else's daughter, who happens to share your DNA. Sarah turned to face him fully. You know what? You're absolutely right. My parents were David and Rose Hartley. They raised me, loved me, taught me everything I know. But Margaret is also my mother. She gave me life, and more importantly, she gave me up so I could have a better one. That takes a kind of love and sacrifice you apparently can't understand. She pulled out a business card and placed it on Margaret's nightstand. My cell is on there. Call me when you're ready, when you're alone and we can talk without all this anger. So you're abandoning her too? Michael asked. Just like that? Sarah paused at the door. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm giving you all space to process this. But let me be clear about something. I've spent the last 3 months getting to know Margaret, not your mother, not the woman who kept a secret, but Margaret the person. She's brilliant, funny, kind, and incredibly lonely. She deserves better than 15-minute visits and arguments about money. She deserves family who shows up because they want to, not because they feel obligated. She looked directly at Margaret. I'll be back next Saturday. Same time. I promise. And then she was gone. The silence she left behind was deafening. Robert was the first to speak. We need to talk about this. As a family. Without her. She is family, Margaret said firmly, finding strength she didn't know she had. Whether you accept it or not, Sarah is my daughter. Your sister. Biologically, maybe, Linda conceded. But family is more than blood. Exactly, Margaret said. Which is why it breaks my heart that a stranger, as you call her, has shown me more kindness and attention in 3 months than my raised children have in a year. That's not fair, Michael protested. Isn't it? When did you last ask about my life before your father? When did you last see me as a person, and not just your mother? Sarah asks. Sarah listens. Sarah cares about Margaret, not just about Mom. She had an agenda, Robert insisted. Yes, she did. She wanted to know me. What's your agenda when you visit? To check off a box? To make sure I'm still alive so you don't miss the funeral. The bitter words surprised everyone, including Margaret herself. But 54 years of keeping secrets had taught her the weight of unspoken truths, and she was done carrying them. Linda was crying now. Mom, we do care. We're just busy. Everyone's busy, Linda. Sarah runs a company worth millions, and she makes time. You know why? Because I matter to her. Not as an obligation, but as a choice. Things were about to get even more complicated. Over the next week, the Henderson family imploded. Robert called a family meeting without Margaret, where he tried to convince his siblings that Sarah was a threat. Linda wavered between anger at her mother and curiosity about this new sister. Michael, true to form, was mainly concerned about potential financial implications. They hired a lawyer to look into Sarah's background, convinced she had ulterior motives. What they found surprised them. Sarah Hartley was worth approximately $50 million. Her medical technology company had developed a revolutionary diabetes monitoring system that had made her wealthy beyond anything the Hendersons could imagine. She donated millions to charity annually. She had no criminal record, no lawsuits, no red flags whatsoever. She doesn't need our money, the lawyer told them bluntly. If anything, you should be hoping she wants to help with your mother's care. Meanwhile, Margaret waited for Saturday. She'd barely slept, barely eaten. Nancy was worried about her. You've lost weight, Mrs. Henderson, and you seem so sad. Is it about your visitor? Your children seemed upset last week. Margaret didn't know how to explain that she was grieving. Grieving the family she thought she had. Grieving the daughter she gave up. Grieving the years lost to secrets and shame. When Saturday arrived, Margaret was sitting in her chair by the window at 9:30. By 9:45, she was trembling. By 9:55, tears were sliding down her cheeks. What if Sarah didn't come? What if her children had scared her away forever? At exactly 10 a.m., Sarah appeared in the doorway. She was carrying a box and a small bouquet of daisies. Her smile was tentative, uncertain. "Hi," she said softly. "You came," Margaret breathed. "I promised I would." Sarah entered and closed the door. "How are you?" "Terrible," Margaret admitted. "My children hate me, and they hate you. They don't hate anyone. They're hurt and confused. It's a lot to process." Sarah set down the box and handed Margaret the flowers. "These are for you." "What's in the box?" Sarah's smile became more genuine. "Photos of my life. I thought if you wanted, I could share them with you, show you who I became." Margaret's hands shook as she opened the box. Inside were dozens of photographs. Baby Sarah in her adoptive parents' arms. Toddler Sarah taking first steps. School photos. Graduation pictures. Her wedding day. Her children. "You have children?" Margaret gasped, looking at a photo of two teenagers. "Twins, David and Rose. After my parents. They're 16 now. Good kids. Smart, kind. Nothing like their mother was at that age." Sarah laughed. Margaret traced the faces in the photos with one finger. Her grandchildren. Grandchildren she'd never known existed. "They're beautiful. They want to meet you," Sarah said carefully. "If you're willing, no pressure." Margaret looked up, tears streaming. "They know about me. I told them last week. After everything, they were fascinated. David especially. He's into genealogy, wants to trace the family tree back as far as possible. And Rose looks just like you." Margaret stared at a recent photo of the girl. She did look like Margaret had at that age. Same eyes, same stubborn chin, same slight smile. "I have something else," Sarah said, pulling out a legal document. "I've been looking into nursing homes in my area. There's a beautiful facility about 10 minutes from my house. Private room, garden views, excellent care ratings. If you're interested, I'd like to move you there. The offer would change everything." Margaret stared at the brochure. The place looked like a luxury hotel, not a nursing home. "Sarah, I can't afford." "I can. And before you say no, before you let pride get in the way, think about this. I couldn't give you 54 years of being your daughter. Let me give you whatever years we have left. My children would never forgive me. They'd visit you more if you were closer to them." Margaret laughed bitterly. "No. Then what do you have to lose?" "Margaret, you gave me life. You gave me to wonderful parents who loved me. You gave me the chance to become who I am. Let me give something back." "But I don't deserve." "Stop." Sarah took her hands. "This isn't about deserving. It's about family. And whether your other children accept it or not, we are family." There was a knock on the door. Nancy poked her head in. "Mrs. Henderson, your son is here." Robert. Robert entered, his face stern. He looked at Sarah with barely concealed hostility. "We need to talk. Alone." Sarah started to stand, but Margaret held her hand. "No. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of Sarah." "Mother, this is family business." "Sarah is family." Robert's jaw clenched. "Fine. Michael and Linda are here too. We've made a decision." The confrontation nobody saw coming. Linda and Michael entered, their faces grim. They stood in a united front against Margaret and Sarah, like soldiers preparing for battle. We've consulted a lawyer, Robert began, and a psychiatrist. We're concerned about your mental state, Mother. This sudden revelation, this stranger you've welcomed into your life, the way you've turned against your own children. You think I'm senile? Margaret asked incredulously. We think you're vulnerable, Linda said, trying to sound gentle. You're elderly, isolated, and this woman has clearly manipulated. Stop, Sarah interrupted. Just stop. If you're suggesting Margaret is mentally incompetent, you're wrong. I've spent 3 months with her. She's sharp, lucid, completely aware, more aware than you apparently are, of how much you've neglected her. You have no right to speak about our family dynamics, Michael said. I have every right. I'm her daughter. You're nothing to us, Robert said coldly. And if you continue to interfere, we'll take legal action. On what grounds? Sarah asked, amused. Visiting my mother, bringing her flowers, offering to pay for better care? Ah, Robert said triumphantly. So you admit you're trying to move her, isolate her from her real family. Real family? Margaret stood up, shaking with rage. Real family? You want to talk about real family? Real family doesn't visit out of obligation. Real family doesn't argue about money while their mother sits in a substandard room. Real family doesn't threaten legal action when someone shows kindness. Mother, you're upset. Linda started. I'm furious. You three have treated me like a burden for years. And now, when someone actually wants to be in my life, you're jealous. Not because you'll miss me, but because it makes you look bad. The accusations were flying fast and fierce. That's not true, Michael protested. We care about you. When? When do you care? When it's convenient? When you remember I exist? Do you know what I did on my birthday last month? Nothing. Because none of you remembered. Sarah remembered. She brought cake, and we celebrated. The three siblings exchanged guilty looks. They had forgotten. Do you know what medications I take? What my doctor's name is? What I do all day in this place? Margaret continued. Sarah knows. Because Sarah asks. Sarah cares. She's known you for 3 months. Robert exploded. We've known you our whole lives. And what have you learned in those lives? That I was just mom, cook, cleaner, nurse, nothing more. You never saw me as a person with a past, with dreams, with secrets and pain. Sarah sees me because she has an agenda. Yes, her agenda is knowing her mother. Your agenda is clearing your conscience with minimal effort. Sarah stood. I think we all need to calm down. Don't tell us what to do, Linda snapped. You've disrupted our entire family. No, Margaret said firmly. The only thing disrupted is your comfortable ignorance. Sarah didn't create this situation. I did, 54 years ago when I gave her up. And you know what? It was the right decision. Look at her. Look what she became. Successful, kind, generous. She became everything I couldn't have given her. So what are we? Michael asked, bitterly. Your consolation prizes? What Margaret said next shocked everyone. You were my redemption, Margaret said quietly. After I gave Sarah up, I threw myself into being the perfect mother for you three. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every penny saved for your education, it was my way of atoning. I couldn't raise her, but I could raise you. I could give you everything. Everything except the truth, Robert said. The truth would have destroyed us. Your father, Harold, was a good man, but a jealous one. If he'd known I'd had another man's baby, and you three were so young when we married, I couldn't risk our family. So you chose us over her? Linda asked, looking at Sarah. I chose stability over truth, security over honesty, and I've regretted it every day since. Do you regret us? Michael's voice was small, vulnerable. Never. Not for a second. But I regret that my fear kept you from knowing your sister. I regret that my shame robbed you all of each other. Sarah moved closer to her siblings. I don't want to replace you. I don't want to steal her away. I just want to know my family. All of my family. We don't know you, Robert said, but his voice had lost some of its hostility. Then get to know me. Ask me anything. Judge me after you know me. Not before. Linda was crying again. This is just so much. Our whole lives have been a lie. No, Margaret said firmly. Your lives have been real. Your memories, your experiences, my love for you, all real. The only lie was my silence about Sarah. The moment of truth had finally arrived. I need time, Robert said finally, to process this, to figure out what it means. I understand, Sarah said. I've had months to prepare for this. You've had a week. Are you really planning to move her? Linda asked. Only if she wants to move, and only if you all are comfortable with it. I'm not trying to steal her. I'm trying to give her the best care possible. We can't afford, Michael started. I'm not asking you to afford anything. I can handle it. We don't take charity, Robert said stiffly. Sarah laughed, but not unkindly. It's not charity. It's what family does. If any of you were wealthy, and I was struggling, wouldn't you help? The siblings were quiet, uncertain. Margaret spoke up. I want to go. I want to be near Sarah and her children, my grandchildren. I want to know them while I still can. You're choosing her over us? Linda asked, hurt evident in her voice. I'm choosing life over existence. I'm choosing to spend whatever time I have left being happy instead of forgotten. We don't forget you, Michael protested weakly. When was the last time any of you called just to chat? Not about bills or medical issues, just to talk? Margaret asked. The silence was answer enough. Sarah calls every evening, just to say goodnight, to ask about my day. Robert ran his hand through his hair, suddenly looking exhausted. We failed you, didn't we? It was the first crack in his armor, and Margaret felt her heart soften slightly. You didn't fail me. You just got busy living. It happens, but I'm 79 years old. I don't have time to wait for you to get unbusy. What happened in the next few minutes would determine everything. Linda sat down on Margaret's bed, really looking at her mother for the first time in years. She saw the thinness, the worn clothes, the sparse room. Mom, are you happy here? No, Margaret said simply. I'm safe. I'm cared for. But I'm not happy. I haven't been happy since Harold died. But you seemed fine. I seemed fine, because that's what you needed me to be. Fine. Low maintenance. Undemanding. Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. But I'm tired of being fine. I want to be happy. Michael walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot. If you move near Sarah, we'd hardly see you. You hardly see me now, and I'm 20 minutes away, Margaret pointed out. Sarah spoke up carefully. The facility I'm suggesting has guest suites. You could visit any time, stay for weekends. I could help with travel costs. If we don't need your money, Robert snapped, then caught himself. Sorry. I'm sorry. This is just overwhelming, Sarah finished. I know. Can I show you something? She pulled out her phone and showed them a video. It was Margaret from a week ago, before the revelation, laughing at something Sarah had said. She looked years younger, vibrant, alive. This is what she's like when she's happy, Sarah said. This is who she could be all the time. Linda was crying again. We're terrible children. No, Margaret said firmly. You're human. You have lives, families, pressures I understand. But understanding doesn't make me less lonely. The truth was finally sinking in. Robert looked at his siblings, then at Sarah, then at his mother. If we agree to this, the move, what happens to us? What do you mean? Sarah asked. Do we become strangers? Do you replace us? Sarah's voice was gentle. I couldn't replace you even if I wanted to. You have 50+ years of history with her. I have 3 months. You're her children who she raised, loved, sacrificed for. I'm the child she sacrificed. We're different parts of her story, not competing chapters. That's very poetic, Michael said sarcastically. But there was less bite to it. It's true, though, Linda said quietly. We can't undo the past. Any of it. The question is, what we do now. Margaret stood up, moving to the center of the room, where all her children could see her. What I want is all of you. Not choosing sides, not keeping score, just family. Complicated, messy, imperfect family. Including her? Robert asked, gesturing at Sarah. Especially her. She's the piece that's been missing for 54 years. There was a long silence. Then Linda stood up and walked over to Sarah. I'm Linda. I'm a real estate agent. Divorced, 2 kids. I like wine. Hate exercise. And apparently, I'm a terrible daughter. Nice to meet you, sister. Sarah smiled, tears in her eyes, and shook her hand. Nice to meet you too. Michael was next. I'm Michael, financial advisor. Married, no kids yet. I'm cheap, obsessed with cryptocurrency, and I forgot our mother's birthday. Welcome to the dysfunction. Even Robert managed a small smile at that. Finally, Robert approached. I'm Robert. I'm an accountant, married for 30 years, 3 kids. I'm controlling, judgmental, and according to our mother, I visit out of obligation rather than love. He extended his hand. I'm sorry for how I reacted. This has been a shock. Sarah shook his hand. I understand. I've had months to prepare, and I was still terrified to tell you all. Why did you? Linda asked. You could have kept visiting, kept it secret. Because secrets are poison, Sarah said, looking at Margaret. They eat away at families, at relationships, at hearts. Margaret kept this secret to protect you all, but it hurt her every day. I couldn't be part of continuing that pain. So what now? Michael asked. Where do we go from here? Margaret spoke up. Now we start over. All of us. No more secrets. No more obligatory visits. No more pretending everything is fine when it's not. If Sarah is willing to have me near her, I want to go. But I want you 3 to be part of it. Real parts, not just holiday appearances. It's a 2-hour drive to Sarah's city, Robert said. So, you drive 2 hours to golf tournaments every month? Margaret shot back. The unexpected response made everyone laugh. She's got you there, Linda said to Robert. What about the grandkids? Michael asked. Our kids don't even know about Sarah, so tell them, Margaret said simply. Tell them the truth, that their grandmother was young and scared, and made a hard choice, but that love is bigger than secrets, and family is more than blood. Sarah pulled out the photos of her children again. Your kids have cousins. They've never met. My twins would love to know their family. Linda picked up a photo. They really do look like Mom. Rose has her stubborn streak too. Sarah laughed. And David has her sense of humor. God help them, Robert muttered, but he was almost smiling. So Margaret said, hope creeping into her voice for the first time in days. Are we doing this? Are we going to be a family? A real family? The siblings looked at each other, a lifetime of shared history passing between them. Finally, Robert spoke. We need ground rules. Family dinners once a month. at least. Holidays shared, not divided, and no more secrets from anyone. Agreed, Sarah said immediately. And I want to know everything, Linda added. About your childhood, your parents, your life. We have 54 years to catch up on. I'd like that, Sarah said. But there was one more surprise coming. Michael cleared his throat. There's something else. If Sarah is moving Mom to a better facility, covering those costs, then the money we've been contributing could go into a fund for activities, trips, whatever Mom wants to do. I don't need, Margaret started. It's not about need, Michael interrupted. It's about want. Sarah's right. You should be happy, not just existing. We could take trips, Linda said, warming to the idea. All of us. Family vacations. We never did that when we were kids. We couldn't afford it, Margaret said. We can now, Robert said. Between all of us, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. Sarah was crying now, the composed CEO facade completely gone. You mean it? You want to try? We're Hendersons, Robert said, with a small smile. We're stubborn, complicated, and apparently terrible at communication, but we don't give up on family. Even, he looked at Sarah, newly discovered family. Margaret sat back in her chair, overwhelmed. I never imagined, I thought telling the truth would destroy everything. It destroyed the lie, Linda said. Maybe that needed to happen. There was a knock on the door. Nancy entered with Margaret's lunch tray. Oh, my full house today. Should I come back? No, Margaret said. We're just finishing. My children were just planning my move. Move? Nancy looked concerned. You're leaving us? I'm moving closer to my daughter, Margaret said, smiling at Sarah. Nancy looked confused. But Linda lives. My other daughter, Sarah. The poor nurse looked even more confused. But she set down the tray and left. Everyone laughed. That's going to be fun to explain, Michael said. Get used to it, Sarah grinned. Wait until you have to explain to your kids that they have an aunt who's older than their parents. What they decided next would change all their lives. Over the next hour, they made plans. Sarah would start the paperwork for the new facility. The move would happen in a month, giving everyone time to adjust. The siblings would help pack Margaret's things, go through old photos, share stories Sarah had never heard. We should do DNA tests, Linda said suddenly. All of us. Map out the family genetics properly. Already did mine, Sarah said, pulling out her phone. That's how I confirmed it. Michael's match on the Ancestry site. Michael looked embarrassed. I forgot I'd done that. My wife wanted to trace her family tree. It's a good thing you did, Margaret said. It brought Sarah to us. To you, Robert corrected, then caught himself. Sorry, old habit, to us. Sarah stood to leave, needing to pick up her children from school. Same time next Saturday? Actually, Robert said. What if we all came, made it a proper family gathering? Margaret's eyes lit up. You'd all come. We should have been coming all along, Linda said. But yes, next Saturday. All of us. Bring the grandkids, Sarah suggested. All of them. Let's make it chaos. You sure you're ready for that? Michael asked. Between us, we have 7 kids, 8 with your twins. I ran a startup from my garage to a $500 million valuation, Sarah laughed. I think I can handle a family gathering. You haven't met Robert's twins, Linda warned. They're terrorists. They're spirited, Robert defended. They set fire to your garage. That was an accident. Margaret listened to her children, bickering and laughing, and for the first time in 54 years, felt complete. As Sarah prepared to leave, she hugged Margaret tight. Thank you, she whispered, for giving me life. Twice. Once when I was born, and again now. Thank you for finding me, Margaret whispered back. For not giving up, for being brave enough to seek the truth. One by one, the other siblings hugged their mother. Real hugs, not the perfunctory gestures they'd been giving. Robert was last, and he held on the longest. I'm sorry, Mom, for everything, for not seeing you, not really seeing you. You see me now, Margaret said. That's what matters. After they all left, Margaret sat in her quiet room, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full of possibility. Nancy came back to check on her. You look different, Mrs. Henderson. Happier. I am happy, Margaret said. For the first time in a very long time, I'm happy. That woman, Sarah, she's really your daughter? She is. My first daughter. My secret daughter. My found daughter. My found daughter. Nancy smiled. Well, she must be special to bring all your kids together like that. They're all special, Margaret said. I just forgot to show them, and they forgot to look. The next Saturday arrived with unexpected drama. Margaret woke early, nervous and excited. She'd barely slept, thinking about having all her children together. Nancy helped her with her best dress, the one she saved for special occasions. You look lovely, Nancy said, like you're going on a date. I am, in a way, a date with my family, my whole family. By 9:45, Margaret was in her chair by the window. At 9:50, Sarah's car pulled up, then Linda's, then Robert's minivan, then Michael's Tesla. Margaret watched her children gathering in the parking lot, talking, gesturing, some awkwardness, still evident but trying. Then the grandchildren started piling out. Robert's twins, holy terrors indeed, racing ahead. Linda's teenagers, looking bored but curious. Michael's wife, whom Margaret hadn't seen in months. And from Sarah's car, two teenagers who looked so much like Margaret's old photos that it took her breath away. They all came up together. A crowd of family filling the hallway. Other residents peeked out of their rooms, curious about the commotion. Sarah entered first with her twins. Margaret, I'd like you to meet David and Rose. The teenagers were shy but polite. Rose had Margaret's eyes exactly. That distinctive green with gold flecks. David had her stubborn chin and the same way of tilting his head when thinking. Grandmother, Rose said tentatively, is that what we call you? Call me whatever feels right, Margaret said, her voice thick with emotion. How about Grandma Maggie? David suggested. Mom said that's what people called you when you were young. I haven't been Maggie in 60 years. Margaret laughed. I'd love that. The room filled with introductions, chaos, laughter. Robert's twins immediately got into Margaret's things, pulling out old photo albums. Who's this? They demanded, pointing at pictures. That's your grandmother when she was young, Robert said, then caught himself. When she was your age. Actually, Linda's teenagers were on their phones until Sarah's son David pulled out a guitar he'd brought. Mom said you used to sing, Grandma Maggie. Oh, not in years. Please? Rose added. Moms told us stories. Margaret looked at all these faces, her family, complete for the first time, and began to sing an old folk song she'd sung to her babies decades ago. Her voice was creaky at first, then stronger as Linda joined in, remembering the words from childhood. I remember this, Michael said suddenly. You sang this when I had nightmares. You sang it to all of us, Robert added. I sang it to Sarah, too, Margaret said quietly. In the hospital, those 3 days. Sarah wiped her eyes. I think I remember, not the words, but the feeling, safe, loved. The afternoon flew by. They ordered pizza, told stories, looked through photos. Sarah had brought albums from her childhood, and they all marveled at the similarities. Linda's daughter looked remarkably like Sarah at the same age. Michael discovered Sarah shared his talent for numbers. Robert and Sarah bonded over their shared tendency to over-organize everything. "We're definitely related," Robert laughed, as Sarah pulled out a color-coded schedule for Margaret's move. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. Around 3 p.m., there was another knock on the door. A man in a suit entered, looking uncomfortable. "I'm looking for Sarah Hartley." "That's me," Sarah said, standing. "I'm James Turner, Jr. I believe you've been looking for information about my father." The room went silent. Margaret went white. James had a son? The man looked at Margaret, and his face softened. "You're Margaret. He talked about you before he died." "He's dead?" Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. 5 years ago, cancer, but he left something. For his daughter, he always knew he had a daughter out there. He hired investigators. But the sealed records, he never found her. But he left this, in case she ever found us. He handed Sarah an envelope. Inside was a letter and a photograph of James, older, graying, but with Sarah's same eyes. Sarah read the letter aloud. "To my daughter, whom I never knew but always loved. I was a coward. I let your mother face everything alone because I was too afraid to leave my marriage, too afraid to be the man you both needed. I've regretted it every day for 50 years. Your mother was the bravest woman I ever knew. If you're reading this, you've found her or she's found you. Either way, know that you were conceived in love, born from courage, and given up in sacrifice. I looked for you, but perhaps it's better that you found your own way. All my love, James." There was also a check for $100,000. "He saved it," James Jr. said. "A college fund for the daughter he never met." Sarah looked at the check, then at Margaret. "We should frame this. The letter, not the check. The check we're using for the biggest family vacation ever." "I can't take his money," Margaret said. "It's not his anymore," Sarah said firmly. "It's ours, all of ours. We're using it to make memories. The memories we should have been making all along." The healing had truly begun. James Jr. stayed for an hour, sharing stories about his father, showing pictures he had known about Margaret, about the affair, about the baby. His mother had known too. Eventually, it had nearly destroyed their marriage, but they'd worked through it. "He never forgave himself," James Jr. said, "for not being brave enough to choose love." "He was young," Margaret said softly. "We were all young." "You were brave, though," James Jr. said. "You did what was best for everyone, even though it hurt you most." After he left, the family sat in contemplative silence. Finally, Robert spoke. "This family has more plot twists than a soap opera." Everyone laughed, breaking the tension. "So what do we do with the money?" Michael asked. "Ever practical." "Family cruise?" Linda suggested. "Disney World?" Robert's twins shouted. "Europe?" Sarah's daughter Rose said hopefully. "Why not all of it?" Sarah said. "We have time. We have money. We have each other. Let's make up for lost time." Margaret looked around the room at all her children, all her grandchildren, this beautiful, complicated, complete family, and made a decision. "First," she said, "we move me closer to Sarah. Then we take a trip. Together, all of us. Somewhere none of us have been. Somewhere we can make new memories without any shadows of old ones." "Where?" they all asked. Margaret smiled. Ireland. I always wanted to see Ireland. My grandmother was from there." "Your great-great-grandmother," she said to the grandchildren. "She came here with nothing but hope. Seems fitting. We go back with everything, each other." The room erupted in excited planning. Over the next month, everything changed. The move happened smoothly, with all the siblings helping. Margaret's new room was 3 times the size of her old one, with a view of mountains instead of a parking lot. The facility was more like a resort, with activities, restaurant-style dining, and most importantly, a sense of dignity and choice. The first family dinner at Sarah's house was awkward but beautiful. The grandchildren bonded quickly. The adults, more slowly but genuinely. Sarah's husband, quiet and kind, welcomed the chaos with grace. They booked the Ireland trip for spring. 15 people, 3 generations, 5 rental cars, and a lifetime of catching up to do. Margaret started a journal, writing down all the stories she'd never told, all the memories she'd buried. Sarah helped her organize them, scanning old photos, creating a family history that included everyone. Robert started visiting weekly, bringing his twins who adored their new Grandma Maggie and their cool Aunt Sarah. Linda came for lunches, real lunches where they talked and laughed. Michael handled all the financial planning for the trip with an enthusiasm he usually reserved for stock portfolios. 3 months after the revelation, they all stood at the airport, ready to board the plane to Dublin. Margaret, in the middle of the group, holding Rose's hand on one side and Robert's youngest on the other, felt the weight of 54 years of secrets finally, completely lifted. "You ready for this, Mom?" Linda asked. Margaret looked at all her children, all 4 of them, and smiled. "I've been ready for this my whole life. I just didn't know it." As they boarded the plane, Sarah walked beside her. "No more secrets. No more secrets," Margaret confirmed. "Only stories. Beautiful, messy, true stories." The plane took off, carrying a family that had been broken by secrets and rebuilt by truth, toward new memories and a future none of them could have imagined just 6 months before. And in seat 23A, a 79-year-old woman looked out the window and whispered a prayer of gratitude for daughters who don't give up, for sons who can change, and for love that survives even the longest silence. The Saturday visitor had become so much more than anyone expected. She'd become the key to unlocking not just a secret, but a family's heart.